Mega Millions just got
more millions!
Now with a chance to multiply your non-jackpot prize up to 10 times for just $5.
That's huge!
Visit VALottery.com/mega. Must be 18 or older to play. Please play responsibly. 888-532-3500. Mega Millions just got
more millions!
Now with a chance to multiply your non-jackpot prize up to 10 times for just $5.
That's huge!
Visit VALottery.com/mega. Must be 18 or older to play. Please play responsibly. 888-532-3500.
I'm Freddie Hudson, and I'm here today with Trade Martin and Bob Marks. Andy Cohen is off this week and is on vacation.
The Harness Racing Alumni Show with your hosts, Freddie Hudson and Trade Martin.
Joining us this week is international owner and breeder Gordon Banks, Cal Expo's Chris Schick, and mutual expert Michael Antoniades. On today's show, we will be discussing the closing of Cal Expo. And now I'm just going to start the show with Chris. Chris, over to you. Chris, you're the GM of Watch and Wager, which holds the Cal Expo Meets license, with the lease contract that was supposed to go through 2030. So it was canceled. So tell us what happened.
Okay, well, let me thank you. Good morning, and it's nice to be on with you. Going back, we took over this lease from the Cal Expo in 2012 when they did a national search and nobody came forward interested in the lease. So my partner and I, Ben Kenny, along with Watch and Wager, who's a European company, took over the lease at that point, and we've been operating for the last 13 years. The recent developments that have happened, as most of you know, probably know, that Golden Gate officially closed in June of last year, 2024, and that set off a total chain of events, so to speak, in California. And there was a group that tried to make a run of the meet to run the Golden Gate to a company called Golden State Racing. And they opened at Pleasanton last fall, and they had a really bad experience, and they did not continue racing into 2025, into this year, which in turn meant that the whole Northern California racing had collapsed, and the historical fair dates in the summer now had no horses in the north. So the fair, Cal Expo, who has run thoroughbred racing during the summer for, I think, 120 some years, had no horses, and they were effectively put out of horse racing. What that spiraled into our agreement was, our agreement had that if they went out of the horse racing business, they could give us a 6-month termination notice to end our lease. They could have only done that if they were out of the thoroughbred racing game. So that was the kind of the thing that triggered the potential for them to give us a 6-month notice. Then the actual giving us a notice coincided with a deal that they had with the X Games, where they signed a 3-year agreement with the X Games to host these extreme events in August. And then it morphed into an even a bigger type of thing where the X Games was going to have a league. Now, this hasn't been officially announced, but it's all been kind of going on yet because they haven't announced the official signing of the year-round contract. But it's my feeling that the reason they gave us the notice is because they have a big deal on the table for this property with the Extreme Games and this new league that they're trying to form with the X Games. So that's kind of like the background of how all of this developed and kind of came about.
Michael, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, just this quick descent of California that now reaches Cal Expo and at some point is going to reach Santa Anita is just frightening. That if we lose California, it's such a huge blow to racing. We're really going to have to pivot to make up for the loss.
Gordon, did you want to put yours 2 cents in here?
Well, it's not so much one can say. It's such a sad event. I remember I was talking with you the other day, Freddie, about when I was younger. I remember being at Los Alamitos and Sacramento and Hollywood, even when they had harness horses, and that everything is now gone from California and that the thoroughbreds are in significant danger. It's a lightning shed moment, and it's very sad. And again, it doesn't bode well for thoroughbred or harness racing nationally, because what led to the downfall there is likely to lead to other downfalls in other locations, which is sad.
Yeah, Trey, did you want to say something?
Yeah, the only thing that's going to save this in California is they're so radical out there are transgender drivers. If we get some transgender drivers, they'll draw a lot of people to the racetrack because they'll have purple hair, and the tattoos and nose rings. I love that. I love the nose rings, because you can grab the chicks by the nose rings and pull them, and it hurts so much that they just come right to you, So I think the transgender thing is the only way to go. What do you think, Chris? Mike?
Is there any alternatives to find another place to race?
I would say yes, there are. It would be like Stockton, which is 40 miles to the south of Cal Expo, has expressed an interest. That would be the San Joaquin County Fairgrounds, and Fresno, which is 200 miles south of Sacramento in the Central Valley, would be a potential spot where they have a really good facility down there. And a potential. We haven't, obviously, with this short notice, have a facility. I'm saying we or somebody would have to have a facility up and ready to run. If we were going to, open, at the end of November, early December, like we do every year, and run through the 1st of May. So that's going to pose probably a huge challenge to try to find a place where you could possibly open in December. I'm not saying it's impossible, but from what I know about Stockton, there's going to be a huge amount of CapEx that's going to be needed to get the track up to CHRB standards for one, and then the barn area hasn't been really taken care of for about 15 or 18 years. So there's challenges in trying to pivot to another place in California for sure.
Now, I know that you had a lighting problem. Like a lot of these fair tracks don't have lighting. So would that force you guys to switch over to daytime racing?
Yeah, I think at least in the interim it would. If we were going to go to San Joaquin, Stockton, or Fresno, we would have to race during the day, and we haven't really done kind of an analysis of what we think that would look like. Running against Santa Anita in the afternoon in California, so yeah, that would definitely change the model. But neither of those facilities that I mentioned have lights.
Okay, we're bringing Michael back in.
Yeah, I wanted to say something that a lot of people don't know. Chris is the originator of strategic wagering, and strategic wagering was brought into about 2011, where people got free pass performances, guaranteed pools, and up to this point, it's been probably one of the most successful things the USTA ever did. And Chris goes back to the boardwalk, and I think he should share some of that, at least for a minute, with how the boardwalk changed everything.
All right, Chris, it's on you, the boardwalk.
The boardwalk. Well, it wasn't the boardwalk in Atlantic City. It was the boardwalk in Las Vegas. And I lived in Las Vegas for about 2 years, and I met a few guys there. And we started, before the boardwalk opened, we started at a place downtown called the Las Vegas Club. and they would give us a 3% rebate, but you had to buy in for $10,000, and they'd give you $10,300. But the place was, it had really small TVs. It wasn't really much of a race book. And the guy who had made the deal with the Las Vegas club then made a deal with the Riviera. And that was 5%. So we moved up to the Strip, and now we were getting 5% rebate at the Riviera. And then this gentleman, along with another partner of his who was a pretty big sports wagering guy, and the Brooks, John and Kirk Brooks. Kirk was the race book manager at the Imperial Palace at that point. They went ahead and opened a boardwalk, which was the Holiday Inn down on the Strip that had this old roller coaster, and they started giving an 8% rebate. This was like 1995. So when they started doing that was kind of ground zero for all of the things that have taken place over the last 30 years regarding rebates, places going offshore, computer assistant wagering, et cetera. But the boardwalk did so fabulously well when they started doing the 8% rebate that all of the other casinos kind of lobbed in on them and said, no, you can't do that because you're stealing our players. And then obviously they ended up finally moving offshore and having a successful business in their own right under Racing and Gaming Services. So, but the boardwalk was quite an interesting place. It wasn't a really big place, but it was bustling with business. There were guys there that had laptops. The internet had just started, and I think it was a lot of things kind of hatched out of the boardwalk that, for better or worse, that are prevalent in today's industry. So it was just kind of a historical moment, somewhat in the overall evolution of the sport of horse racing.
Talking about Atlantic City, I think if I remember correctly, Trade, you were playing at the Gamois for one of the SOA dinners there. And Benny Webster came up to you, and he wanted to. He didn't know you at that time, and he didn't know your band, and he really didn't know who you were. And Benny basically wanted you guys to play for another hour or something, and he offered you $100. And you said, I'd like to take it, Benny, but we got a plane to catch because we're on our way to Vegas to play. Is that the correct story that I remember correctly?
Something like that. Yeah. Well, Benny thought he could buy anything, but he couldn't buy Trade Martin, So, but I love Benny, and I've been thinking about doing a tribute race for him at Goshen. In fact, I'm going to call Goshen today and set up a tribute race for him. It costs $150. So I'm going to. I did one for Vince Bergamo last year. I'm going to do one for Benny Webster this year. I told the girls up there I'm going to do that. Benny was a great guy. I got to know Benny really well later on. You would have to add to that.
Gordon, bringing you back in.
I think I'm more like everybody else that's listening. I'm thinking this is interesting and not so much that I know personally about, but certainly interesting.
Did you ever meet Benny?
Oh, a long time ago, yes. Not well. I met all the drivers. I was very close with Luc Villette and Jackie Moe and all of them. But Benny I didn't know that well. He was a little earlier. John Chapman, Benny Insco. I knew them all, yes.
And we're going to get back to Chris over here and start talking a little bit more about Cal Expo. Chris, what type of handle was Cal Expo doing? And what was the handles over there? And what does the state
were generally we were generally averaging somewhere. This year it's been down a little bit. We've been in the high fives, but historically we've been in the mid sixes to close to 700,000 range over the last 4 or 5 years. So our handle was always kind of our strong suit. the California simulcast network, which was always a powerful thing because there's 36 locations, and that really got hurt during the pandemic, and people obviously, when we closed for however many months we were closed, I think that the brick and mortars were closed for like 16 months. We had a huge rush into online, people opening up accounts and betting online, which was kind of saved us during the pandemic. But those people never really returned, or a certain portion of those people did not return to the brick and mortar. And I'm sure that wasn't just in California. The most brick and mortars right now, and I know Michael's from Illinois, and the handles in the brick and mortar in Illinois have just dropped. So that has played a role in California, because that in-state dollar, as opposed to a dollar being bet out of state, is almost equivalent to $3 to an out-of-state dollar. So the drop in the in-state handle has had an impact on us, no doubt. But generally speaking, we're right around the $600,000 mark, and we generally run between 9 and 11 races. We don't have the product, and we only race 2 days a week, obviously, which is we'd like to go 3, but there's just not enough content for 3 days, and sometimes we struggle a little at 2 days, quite frankly.
So are the horses stabled on the grounds?
Yes, every one of our horses are stabled on the grounds. A lot of people don't know that we're kind of, even though HISA hasn't come to harness racing per se, it's kind of already had come to California. We just to tell you what we've been running under, every horse has to be on the ground 7 days before they race in California. Okay, and that would, if something like that ever happened in other states, it would almost be a non-starter. But we're totally self-contained in that regard. You have to have a pre-entry veterinary inspection, and that has to be done within 72 hours prior to entry every week, and that's a requirement. And we don't allow any NSAIDs at all. There's zero tolerance for any type of NSAIDs. If you're going to do an intravenous joint injection, you have to have a 14-day stand-down period. So we've been operating under some very, very stringent guidelines here for the last few years, and all of this was kind of a result of that the situation that developed in 2018 with the deaths down at Santa Anita and the reform that came, and it's just kind of been one thing after another. So. Yes, we're totally self-contained here at Cal Expo. We got a really nice backstretch. The track here is just it's a really good track. It's old. It's not great in the winter, but historically it was built for the summer racing. But obviously the model that we've kind of used is that we can't really race in the summer. So anyway, it's quite a nice place. As I think. Gordon said that he was there at one point, and it's a very, very nice track.
Yeah. Hey, Chris, I want to go back to
Sacramento.
I wanted to go back to you, Chris. So the California Racing Board didn't make any adjustments for harness racing, so they have you racing under the same rules as the thoroughbreds? Is that what you've just pretty much said?
Pretty much, yes. And the problem was that at the time we knew that some of these rules were not really kind of relevant to standard-bred racing. But during the time that all of these rules were being made, there were activists at every meeting, and it was really a wild show out here, as probably some of you know. And for us to get up and say we wanted to be excluded from this rule, it just wasn't feasible. You know what I mean? So we kind of acquiesced to some of these things, and I don't think this was. I'm not counting it as our downfall. I think some of these things are actually some of them are actually good. Some of them are probably overreach for sure. Yeah, so essentially the answer to your question is yes. We are essentially in that regard operating under HISA rules, probably even stronger than HISA rules, because I don't know if HISA has a zero tolerance for any NSAIDs at all, but that's the position of out here in California.
Hey, Gordon, did you want to jump in here?
No, I was curious about the financial situation that was underpinning racing at Cal Expo. I presume, like every other harness operation on a standalone basis, it certainly couldn't make money. How, if you go to other locations, how do you see putting together a prospectus that makes sense for an investor to proceed?
Yeah, that's you've hit the nail on the head there, Gordon. With the problem, we have been treading water out here. We did have a few years where we eked out some profit, and we obviously we run a very kind of a tight show out here. I mean, we don't do a lot of thrills or anything, but yeah, I mean that's the thing. I think that from an investor's point of view, if he was going to look at a pro forma that you put together today, if he was interested in some kind of instant return on his investment, it's probably not going to be there at all. I think if he, and that's kind of where Watch and Wager was back in 2012. They thought that they weren't really concerned about making profit too much with this business. Of course, they wanted to make profit and they wanted to run it right, but profit wasn't their initial motive. It was holding the lease and trying to leverage that into something else. They thought maybe at one point it looked like we were going to get exchange wagering. At one point it looked like we were going to get sports wagering. There's been a lot of talk for, HHR, historical horse racing. So they kind of were willing to stay in there, kind of on the if come, so to speak. So that's what a new investor would probably be looking at. But I don't know what the real prospect of that is in California, because as you know, the tribes have a real stronghold on the gaming market here in California.
Yeah, it's a tough ask.
Hey, Chris, is there any chance of basically possibly moving to Arizona or Nevada?
Well, there's been a gentleman who's been trying to work on Nevada for a number of years, and he's come and addressed the district USTA meeting on a number of occasions. And I don't know exactly where he's at right now, so I can't speak to his plan in Nevada. Regarding Arizona, I don't think many people noticed. Watch and Wager, we had an agreement to run a meet at Arizona Downs, which is in Prescott Valley. We signed an agreement with the track owner 3 years ago. And our plan was to run a meet in between. Most of our guys go to Minneapolis now and race at Running Aces. And Running Aces ends in September, middle of September. Our plan was to have those guys who were really interested come race in Arizona, and then we would transition into Cal Expo. So we were going to have like an 8-week meet in Arizona Downs, which would bridge us into Cal Expo. We sent all of our horsemen over there. We basically, we didn't rent a plane, but we had them all on a flight. Everybody did a tour, and to the person, everybody was like, "Wow, this place is like great." So we did have that agreement. The problem we ran into, we turned in an application, and the commission never heard our application, and so. And I'd like to be able to say, well, they didn't hear it because of this, that, and the other thing, but the reality of it is they didn't hear it, in my view, because obviously there were strong political interests that didn't want standardbred racing in Arizona. Whether that's still the case right now, I did get a call from the owner of Arizona Downs when he heard this news, and I've spoken with him pretty much on and off throughout this whole thing because obviously his track is sitting vacant right now. He used to have a summer thoroughbred meet that he would run after Turf Paradise closed in Phoenix, and Prescott Valley's up in the mountains about a mile and a half, an hour and a half away from Phoenix. But he got into a skirmish with Turf Paradise over hosting who was the host. And anyway, his thoroughbred meet became non-feasible. So that's a long answer, Freddie, to your question. But I wouldn't rule out. I think Arizona has a lot of potential, especially that you have a facility there that's kind of like virtually a turnkey facility. And if I would urge anybody, if they get out to the Phoenix area to go take a look at this Arizona Downs, it's like a jewel that's kind of tucked away in the Prescott Valley that probably most of you really didn't know much about.
Michael, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I wanted Chris to explain how the state limits his simulcasting compared to like all these other tracks in the country.
Let me 1 second. This is Gordon. I have to leave for an appointment now, so okay. I just wanted to say that, and I wanted to say to Chris, it was a good presentation and really interesting. And if he ever has anything I can do to help, feel free to contact me.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Gordon.
Thank you, Gordon, for being on the show.
Oh no,
thank
pleasure.
You,
okay, take care. Bye.
See you, Gordon. Bye-bye.
So, Chris, explain the simulcasting. How limited you are.
Yeah. Well, yeah. It's mind blowing in a certain way. Right now, Harness Racing has no dark simulcasting. So on days that we don't race, there's no harness simulcasting. That's not permitted under the law. On the days that we race live, we're allowed 10 domestic imports. So a total of 10 races. So generally speaking, those 10 races would come from the Meadowlands. And then we're allowed one full card of international simulcasting, which generally that's our Woodbine signal. So very, very compared to a lot of facilities, very limited, amount of imports that are allowed in. So that's always been a hindrance, and trying to get the law changed, it's been like pulling teeth, quite frankly, because obviously there's other interests that don't really want expansion of simulcasting, quite frankly.
Hey, Michael, didn't you have a statement that you wanted to make?
I did. And the reason I want to make it is because the problems Chris has, I think, are coming to the East Coast. So I want to say that the board released a statement during the Derby, and I know the Derby's famous for kings and queens and billionaires, but at Cal Expo, all you have on the backside are people that were there under the premise that there was a 5-year lease. They planted roots, they bought horses, possibly homes, and many of them are just trying to get by, and inflation is just destroying these small trainers every day. But these are the trainers that they get up early in the morning, they stay up late at night, they sleep in the stall when horses don't feel well, and the times you have people that starve themselves to make sure that their horses eat plenty and stay healthy. And I don't think these are the people that we should be punishing. The mission of this board is to serve the people of California, and these are just hardworking people and poor horses. They deserve better. And as Chris touched on, you get these rich lobbyists, especially with the American Indians, that kill any legislation that could have saved California racing along the way, such as nighttime simulcasting, historical racing, sports wagering. Churchill bought Hollywood 20 years ago, and they realized they were just so overmatched against the Indians. That eventually is SoFi Stadium. So at some point, there's these things that can help, and you got all these agricultural jobs in the state, and those agricultural jobs are everywhere. So in conclusion, I just think this board needs to reconsider and give Cal Expo the same one-year extension you gave Golden Gate. I think it's the humane and proper course of action for these horsemen and these poor animals, and please just reconsider. But I think this stuff that we talk about, the coupling, Freddie, and Bob, for the last 2 months, it's coming, and we need to get we need to get our stuff together here on how to fight here, because these horsemen and then the horses have no voice. We need better advocates.
I think Kentucky's put the model out there for everyone to follow if they could with the historic racing. That seems to be a big hit in Kentucky, and they seem to have done it the right way. And that's at you, Michael.
Yes. I mean, Kentucky actually, Freddie and I are doing a show Thursday with people that were in the business for 20 years, got out, and are now getting back in because of Kentucky. Kentucky's giving people hope that they can get into the breeding industry and actually take a full swing, and hopefully they're commercial for more people to get into the industry, and not only in Kentucky, but in some of these other states. But yes, Kentucky's giving a lot of people hope.
Yeah, and next week's show, I've invited 3 breeders to come on for next week, and we're going to be talking about the breeding program in Kentucky and racing in Kentucky. That'll be next week's show. And I guess with that, I should close the show out. Michael, Chris, I want to thank you guys very much for joining us today. Gordon also, even though he's left. Thank you guys for coming on the show.
My pleasure, Freddie. Be happy to come on anytime.
The Harness Racing Alumni Show is the #1 harness racing podcast in North America and is listened to worldwide on multiple platforms, including Spreaker, iHeartRadio, USTrots.com, HarnessLink, Google Podcasts, and many others. To our audience, thanks for listening, and please join us again next week.
The Harness Racing Alumni Show